It's November 2nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the Federal Reserve's second consecutive rate freeze. The Fed on Wednesday again kept its key lending rate unchanged against the backdrop of a strong economy and labor market and inflation that is still well above the central bank's target, while leaving the door open for further rate hikes. The Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt opened on Wednesday, allowing limited evacuations of the injured and foreigners. The almost month-long Israel-Hamas war has left over 10,000 people dead, with one-third of them children. South Korea's intel agency believes North Korea is in the final stage of preparations for its third satellite launch, which is likely to be a successful one on the back of Russia's sharing of space technology. Egypt on Wednesday opened its border through the Rafah crossing to allow limited evacuations of the injured and foreigners. The border will be open again for the second day on Thursday. Our Yi-seung starts us off.
A total of 335 foreign passport holders were allowed to leave Gaza via the Rafah crossing on Wednesday, as well as 76 Palestinians who are seriously injured due to the ongoing airstrikes in the region. The Rafah crossing is expected to be opened for the second straight day on Thursday to allow more foreign nationals stuck in Gaza to evacuate safely to Egypt. According to sources, the list of those allowed to evacuate through the crossing will be agreed between Egypt and Israel, with embassies from respective countries being informed in advance to ensure they can prepare to receive their citizens. Meanwhile, the Israeli military conducted an airstrike in the Jabalia area of northern Gaza for the second straight day on Wednesday. While the number of casualties from the second airstrike has not been confirmed, Gaza's health ministry says dozens of people were killed or wounded in the latest attack. According to the United Nations, there are some 116,000 registered refugees in the camp, which was set up in the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. While Israel says it had targeted high-ranking Hamas officials hiding in the camp and eliminated a top Hamas commander, the Palestinian militant group has dismissed the claim and instead noted that 7 of the hostages taken from Israel, including 3 foreign passport holders, were killed in the strike. The statement from Hamas has not yet been verified. The combined Israeli and Palestinian death toll has now surpassed 10,000. Gaza's health ministry says over 8,800 Palestinians have been killed so far, with around 1,400 deaths reported in Israel. Children make up a third of the total death toll. Lee-seung-jae, Arirang News.
And it's the civilians that are paying the price in the fight between Israel and Hamas. Humanitarian aid for people in Gaza is nowhere near meeting the need, forcing residents to spend all day looking for food and water. Choi Soo-hyung reports.
Israel has imposed a complete blockade on Gaza since October 9th, increasing the intensity of its attacks, including retaliatory airstrikes and sending in ground troops, leaving those in the Gaza Strip in a desperate situation. According to the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, following the imposition of the blockade, food and water are running out, and hundreds of Gaza residents are starving as they desperately try to obtain essential food items such as bread and vegetables.
We hope that the shops will manage to maintain the essential food supplies, such as flour and cooking oil. We also need car parts and diesel fuel. Today, I had to travel a long way in an ox cart to buy flat bread, but got nothing.
The Gaza Strip used to depend on Israel and Egypt for most of its food. However, when Hamas won in the Palestinian Legislative Council elections in 2006, Israel imposed a partial blockade. As a result, over half of the Gaza population fell into poverty, and the recent war has pushed many into starvation. Israel has allowed a small amount of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, but the UN World Food Programme estimates that this may only last for about 7 days. Furthermore, Israel has completely halted fuel supplies due to concerns about Hamas hijacking them for military use.
Due to the difficulty in finding transportation, as there are no cars because there is no diesel or gas, we are forced to ride a donkey cart because it is all that is available now.
Moreover, diseases such as skin infections and the emergence of head lice are spreading rapidly, leading to a public health disaster. According to the Middle East Monitor, schools and camps operated by refugee aid organizations are overcrowded because more than 15,000 Gaza residents are seeking refuge from Israeli airstrikes, causing serious life-threatening health and hygiene issues.
I am raising alarm about the possibly catastrophic consequences of large-scale ground operations in Gaza and the potential for thousands more civilians to die.
The Gaza Health Ministry said generators in the two main hospitals in Gaza will completely stop without essential fuel and electricity supplies, and there is a growing risk of infant mortality due to a lack of food and infrastructure damage from the fighting. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
North Korea appears to be in the final stages of preparations for what will be its third attempt to launch a spy satellite. On the occasion of Wednesday's parliamentary audit, South Korea's National Intelligence Service said final preparations are in full swing, including inspections on engine and launch devices. It also added that there is a higher chance that the third launch will be successful, as the regime appears to have received technical advice from Russia. The NIS also says that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is believed to have ordered officials to come up with ways to support Palestine. The agency also spotted signs that the regime has provided Russia with more than 1 million artillery rounds since early August. South Korean Ambassador Cho Hyun-dong has vowed to step up efforts to deter North Korea's breach of UN Security Council resolutions. Seoul's top envoy in Washington told reporters on Wednesday that South Korea will enhance diplomatic efforts with the U.S. and other like-minded countries to deter North Korea, citing evidence that suggests Pyongyang's arms deal with Russia and its connection with Hamas. The remarks also come as Pyongyang plans to make a third attempt at launching a military reconnaissance satellite using ballistic missile technology, which is banned under UN Security Council resolutions. He added that these will be discussed during U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Seoul next week. Leading AI nations like the U.S., UK, and China have all pledged to cooperate on managing artificial intelligence, which they agree pose a potentially catastrophic risk to humanity. During the first day of the AI Safety Summit hosted by the British government and Blicheli, 28 governments, including South Korea, signed up the so-called Blicheli Declaration. That is the first international declaration on the technology under which the countries agreed to work together on frontier AI safety and research, despite global competition in taking the lead in developing new regulations. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak welcomed the declaration, calling it quite incredible. And South Korea agreed to co-host a mini virtual summit on AI in the next 6 months. The U.S. Central Bank on Wednesday decided to leave interest rates unchanged once again, acknowledging the U.S. economy's surprising strength. But the possibility of a further increase in borrowing costs was not ruled out. Our An Sung-jin reports.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to maintain interest rates in the 5.25% to 5.5% range. This was the second consecutive meeting after September, where the FOMC held rates steady at a 22-year high. The decision is mostly attributed to a slowdown in inflation, as the Consumer Price Index recorded an on-year decrease, while the U.S. economy has been growing at a constant pace over the past month, potentially increasing the growth rate to the 2% range. An increase in the government bond rates also reduced the need for additional interest rate hikes by the Fed, as borrowing costs for households and businesses rose.
Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a strong pace and well above earlier expectations.
The Fed's second straight pause follows a series of rate hikes over the previous year and a half, including 4 in 2023, as the committee fought to tame high inflation. Though inflation has cooled since last summer when prices peaked at a high unseen in nearly 4 decades, inflation is still lingering above the Fed's target of 2% per year, hinting that a future hike may be needed.
But a few months of good data are only the beginning of what it will take to build confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our goal. The process of getting inflation sustainably down to 2% has a long way to go. And we're looking at all those things as we make a decision in December. We haven't made that decision.
The latest decision also means that the rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. will remain in the 1.75 to 2 percentage points range. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
So no surprise that the Fed decided to skip raising its current policy tightening cycle, but the U.S. Central Bank also didn't roll out future rate hikes. For more, let's turn to Professor Song Soo-young this morning. Great to have you back.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Good morning to you.
Professor Song, the Fed decided to maintain its current interest rate stance. Now, this is not a surprise, is it?
Yeah, no surprise at all, because in the middle of the October, he has attended some session that he has mentioned the Federal Reserve is anticipating this remain what it used to be, at least for the federal funds rate. So as Mr. Powell has noted, clearly during the last September and October, we have seen the surge of the long-term interest rate, particularly from term structure. The 10-year-old yield has been increased a lot. That could be a really burden for the borrowing, people's borrowing. So it could have some pressure on in the long run for the consumer spending and the financial behavior and activities. Therefore, that's why the Federal Reserve has sustained the current stance for the interest rate keeping what it used to be.
Right, the U.S. economy is holding up well for now, but the Fed is not done with its tightening policy just yet, right? Should we expect an additional hike maybe next month?
Yeah, because there is in the market, we can see some very opposite way signal from the market. Clearly, the high yield on the long-term rate could be a burden and put the pressure on the inflation and the consumer behavior. But clearly, we have seen that in the third quarter, in the U.S. market, the consumption spending has been increased from 4% to 4.8% by as much as 0.8 percentage points. So still, people would like to spend the money, whether it is in revenge consumption because of the pressured demand during the coronavirus. Particularly recently, people's expenditure has been greatly increased in the service, such as music or some sports ceremony or attending those spendings has been increased a lot. Relatively, and another perspective, the economic growth rate for the third quarter in the United States, I was really surprised because the U.S. economy looks like some developing economy rather than developed economy. So 4.9%, that is very impressed. But the problem is only U.S. economy cannot such high growth cannot be sustained, definitely, because the United States is part of the world economy. Clearly, the U.S. has been taking the largest part, but to maintain the U.S. economy rather very sustainable growth rate, they have to take into account of some spilling negative effect on the other world economy except the United States.
Definitely. We also have to talk about the Israel-Hamas war. That's reason as another variable apart from all those domestic situations that you've just laid out. Is the war over in the Middle East influencing the Fed's decision? Now, if not yet, will it ever in the future? What do you think?
Yeah, recently, this morning I have seen that the Yemen's Houthi rebellions has declared war against Israel. So actually, this is just a small part. However, the United States is clearly concerned about developing this Israel-Hamas war developing into some regional war between the Iran and Saudi Arabia and other countries surrounding Israel. So it is in the U.S. interest to halt and this war from containing just within regional war or stopping war immediately, or at least achieve some truce between the conflicting countries. So to this regard, I don't expect much threat from the Israel-Hamas war. However, we don't know, because in the political landscape in Israel is very volatile, and the far-rightist and the very extreme far-right Zionist in Israel has, they would like to maintain this war, and although they would like to take the risk of the whole war against the Arab world. So that is a really concern. If that happens in the future, clearly that must be a burden, and some Arab world and other countries try to make use of some energy commodities for the weapon against Israel and the Western economies. So that is a really serious, that is going to be a really serious threat.
Indeed. Before I let you go, Professor Song, another eye-catching event was the quarterly Treasury funding announcement. Now, why is it important for market watchers? How is it related to interest rates?
I think this is just an ordinary operation for the Treasury Department, because this is the issuance of the savings bonds. What the types is EE and savings I type bonds. Both has a relatively very long term, but however, the type I Treasury bonds has been some variable interest coupon could be paid to the holders or purchasers of such bonds. The problem is, because of recent, as I mentioned earlier, the long-term yield for the has been increased. That is a really burden for the mortgage loan and the borrowers, and or student loan, definitely. And that is going to be a really put the weight on some price increase, and also the consumption behavior. To that regard, it is effectively, the federal funds rate is a short-term interest rate, so increased high yield in the long-term bonds has a very similar effect on another hike of the short-term federal funds rate. So that's why the FOMC has decided to maintain the hold federal funds rate at this level right now. So I think this does not affect market very much at all.
All right, Professor Song, thank you as always for your insight. You have a great day.
Thank you for inviting me.
A day after his budget speech at the National Assembly, President Yoon once again stressed physical soundness, doing so on Wednesday at a town hall meeting, as it is directly linked to inflation and people's livelihoods. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon said cutting government spending was to stabilize prices, which ultimately will help the working and middle classes.
왜냐하면 이제 결국은 이제 돈이 든단 말이에요. 돈이 드는데 그 돈을 누가 부담할 거냐. 또 재정에서 이걸 쓰려고 하면 이게 이제 예산을 막 늘릴 수는 없잖아요. 예산이 막 정부 재정 지출이 팍팍 들어가면요. 물가가 오릅니다.
This was his message on Wednesday as Yoon presided over the 21st Emergency Economic Meeting with 60 residents from all backgrounds and relevant ministers in a town hall setting at a cafe in Seoul's Mapogu district.
This meeting was held at a cafe, a place where people gather, reflecting the president's consistent emphasis that the people are always right and the need to leave the office to listen to what people have to say in person.
Also, citizens shared their hardships with the president, who listened and promised to consider their needs as he carries out his economic policies. One of them was a taxi driver who called out the nation's major taxi calling application Kakao Mobility, saying it was using its leverage to drive up the commission it charges drivers. President Yoon said this was in fact an unethical act by a monopoly and called on the relevant ministers present to come up with measures to stop this corporate behavior. Yoon also called out major banks for their monopolizing of the sector and not helping out small business owners. He said the banking system in South Korea has to be changed. As he spoke with the citizens, Yoon reflected on when he first jumped into politics after spending his career as a prosecutor. It's widely known that a shopkeeper from Mapogu district was one of the motivations for the transition he made, as he saw how hard making a living was for the working class. Yoon spoke frankly of the hardships of the presidency, especially as a nation is in an era of political excess with resistance to budget reallocations.
이거를 어려운 서민들을 두툼하게 지원해 주는 쪽으로 예산을 좀 재배치를 시키면 아우성입니다. 아우성이에요. 내년 선거 때 보자. 아주 탄핵시킨다. 뭐 이런 얘기까지 막 나옵니다.
Yoon also pledged that he would not prioritize political gain, even with the general election coming up in a few months, and take responsibility for all his actions. 김도영, Arirang News.
Japan's Tokyo Electric Power Company is set to begin its third phase of wastewater release from the Fukushima nuclear power plant on Thursday. According to TEPCO, it has completed preparations for the next discharge, and if weather conditions allow, it will start discharging water into the ocean at around 10:30 a.m. local time. It added that it will discharge about 7,800 tons of wastewater over 17 days, as was the case for the first two phases. TEPCO plans to dispose of 31,200 tons of contaminated water after 4 phases by March next year.
Good morning, I'm Kim Ji-young, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Iran, where imprisoned women's rights activist Narges Mohammadi has smuggled out a letter of thanks for her Nobel Peace Prize. Mohammadi, who is currently serving multiple sentences in Tehran's Evin prison amounting to about 12 years, was awarded the prize last month for her fight against the oppression of Iran's women. The 51-year-old managed to smuggle out the letter written in October, which was read out by her daughter, Kiana Rahmani, on Tuesday evening local time. To a letter to Inspire, Mohammadi expressed gratitude for the award, saying it marked a turning point in empowering protests and social movements worldwide. Arrested more than a dozen times and held 3 times at Evin prison since 2012, Mohammadi said in her letter that while fight for democracy in Iran is difficult, we believe in it, commit to it, and are certain of victory. Moving over to Bosnia and Herzegovina, where a Swedish crime boss was killed in Sarajevo on Tuesday night in a mafia-styled execution. Swedish national Haris Osterda, head of Vinsta drug trafficking network, was shot dead with a silencer gun by a killer on a bicycle. Elvira Mutic, an associate of Osterda, was also shot and injured but survived. Local police have arrested 3 suspects on suspicion of participating in the murder. Moving over to Switzerland, where restrictions on blood donations from homosexual men have been completely lifted. From Wednesday, gay men are allowed to give blood as long as they pass the same eligibility criteria required for homosexuals, heterosexuals. During the HIV/AIDS epidemic of the 1980s, gay men in Switzerland were banned from donating blood. However, in 2017, the policy was relaxed to allow sexually active gay men to give blood a year after last having homosexual relations. But with the new rules, the waiting period has been shortened to 4 months after their last sexual encounter, which is the same for heterosexuals. Swiss Transfusion SRC, in charge of Switzerland's blood supply, as well as Swiss Medic, the licensing authority, agreed to changes to implement the new policy.
Good morning. A morning jacket might have felt too warm for many. We are having the warmest November morning temperatures on record in the capital. And the highs will also hike 3 degrees higher than yesterday's toasty temperatures in Seoul. And unlike Wednesday, the sun is taking center stage. Meanwhile, Gyeongju will see highs of 29 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Southern inland areas are having a foggy start to the day, so please drive with care. While northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and west of Gangwon-do could see bad dust levels, but the rest of the country will have decent air quality today. Hard to believe these November numbers. Most places will have highs in the mid to upper 20s with falling leaves today. But rain that rolls in tomorrow will put the brakes on these unseasonably warm temperatures. Central regions will see rain tomorrow, then from Saturday into next Monday, it's going to rain nationwide. Then brace yourselves, winter starts to peek through the curtain next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.